Somewhere right now, a stranger with the exact same salary as you is quietly getting richer every single month, without working a single extra hour. Not because they got lucky, not because they inherited something, because of one number most people never actually calculate: how many things they own that are working even while they sleep. Here's the rule underneath all of it. Assets put money in your pocket. Liabilities take money out of it. The more of the first one you own, the richer you become. Simple to say, much harder to actually live by, because most of what looks like wealth is really just liabilities wearing a nice outfit. So today, let's go through exactly what the wealthy quietly own and why each one keeps making them richer long after the initial work is done. Cash, not just sitting. Cash in the bank still earns you something, even if it rarely beats inflation these days. So why do wealthy people still hold a serious chunk of their money in cash? 2 reasons. First, opportunity. When the right deal shows up, and it will, the only thing that matters is whether you can move on it immediately. Second, leverage. Cash in hand often gets you a better price than credit ever could, and in some cases it can even be lent out for a return through private lending arrangements. Just remember, anything promising unusually high returns deserves real scrutiny before you touch it. Real estate. Rent in, value up. Real estate earns its reputation honestly, for 2 reasons. Rent comes in every single month with relatively little ongoing effort. And over time, property values tend to climb as demand for space keeps growing. This covers residential property people live in and pay you for, office space businesses rent from you, commercial space where businesses sell to their own customers, and raw land that appreciates simply by existing in the right place. One clarification worth repeating. The home you personally live in is not an asset. It's a liability with good lighting. It costs you money every month and puts nothing back in your pocket. Bonds and stocks. Owning a piece of something bigger. When governments or companies need funding, they issue bonds, essentially a promise to pay you back with interest over a set period. They're considered safe, which also means the returns are modest, usually a few % a year. Stocks work differently. Buying a share means owning a literal slice of a real business. It sounds intimidating until you realize you don't need to be a stock-picking genius to benefit from it. Most people who try to beat the market consistently don't. That's exactly why index funds exist. Instead of betting on one company, you own a basket of the best performing companies at once. And as weaker companies fall out, stronger ones take their place automatically. Historically, a broad market index has returned somewhere around 9 to 10% annually over the long run. Not explosive, just remarkably consistent, which is exactly what makes it one of the most reliable ways ordinary people build long-term wealth. Equipment and skills. What actually earns you money? Anything that directly helps you generate income counts as an asset, whether that's a tractor, a laptop, or a car you use for work. The moment it stops being tied to your income and simply becomes a lifestyle upgrade, it quietly becomes a liability instead, no matter how it's justified. The same logic applies to skills. A skill that's rare and valuable enough for people to pay for is one of the few assets nobody can ever repossess from you. Patents, trademarks, and royalties. Owning the idea itself. Patents protect something you invented, and they force anyone who wants to use that invention to pay you for the privilege. Some of the biggest fortunes in modern history trace back to a single protected idea. Simple toys, one clever catchphrase, or one product that became a category of its own. Trademarks work the same way for names, symbols, and phrases. Get one attached to something people recognize and pay for, and you can license it out indefinitely. Royalties take this even further. Write something, license something, or create something once, and you can be paid on it for decades. This is exactly how one science fiction filmmaker, who kept the merchandising rights to his own story, ended up building a fortune worth billions, long after the original film left theaters. Brand. Goodwill and people. The assets. You can't always see. A brand is the image a company puts into the world. Goodwill is the emotional trust people feel toward it, and it's one of the hardest things to build, but one of the most valuable once it exists. Companies have survived collapse purely because customers cared enough to stick around. And then there are people. Companies aren't really buildings or logos. They're the ideas and decisions of the people running them. Replace the right person, and an entire company's trajectory can shift overnight, for better or worse. The more valuable and harder to replace you become inside any organization, the more you personally function as an asset. Alternative assets and digital products. Beyond the obvious commodities, art, and rare collectibles all move with supply and demand, and over long stretches of time, several of these categories have quietly outperformed more traditional investments. The catch is simple. Never put money into something you don't genuinely understand, no matter how convincing the trend looks. Digital products deserve a mention here too. A book, a course, a song, or any piece of content only has to be created once, and it can be sold or streamed indefinitely afterward. This is exactly why a handful of creators have earned more from a single well-placed piece of content than most people earn in years of traditional work. The real secret: time, money, and time again. Here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. In the beginning, you likely don't have the capital to buy most of what we just covered. What you do have is time. The wealthy understand a simple exchange. Use your time to generate money. Use that money to eventually buy back other people's time. That's the entire foundation of how businesses work. Every employee generates more value than they're paid for, and the difference is what we call profit, the reward for solving exactly that equation. So if you're just getting started, that's the honest starting point. Trade your time for money deliberately and well. Then use what you build to buy leverage, first through assets, and eventually through other people's time too. None of this requires luck, an inheritance, or a head start most people never got. It requires understanding one distinction almost nobody sits down to teach you: what actually earns money while you sleep, and what only feels like progress. If you've made it this far and this framework actually clicked for you, drop the letters TMT in the comments below. Most people scrolling past this video won't have a clue what that means. You will. If this was useful, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.